Okay, so let's go through this task. I guess this wasn't easy. I know because generics is advanced topic. So I just gave you a little insight this generics because we are going to use them. So you need to know how and when to use generics. First step was to check if answer is not empty. So how can we check if this string text contains some value? What are the options? So there can be different approaches. Okay, so you use this comparison if answer is equal to empty string. So that is one way how to check. But a better solution is to use built-in method string is null or empty. I guess you know this method. You should know it. I think you have used it quite a lot in previous part of the bootcamp. This method string is null or empty checks whether this value for this variable is defined or not, and is null or empty checks for null value and for empty value. So this method covers both cases, null and empty string. And if user entered empty answer, then we can show this message that value must be provided. And of course, we can, as I think Linda previously mentioned, we can write it inside one if statement. So I can merge them like this if is required and is null or empty. You don't need to write is equal to true. You can just leave it if is required. And in that case, when value was required but user didn't enter it, we need to start this method from the beginning. So again, we need to ask user the same question so he has another chance to provide the answer. So what we can do, if you used loop, then continue is one possibility. But as you can see, I'm not using loop now. Is there a way to start method from the beginning without a loop? Yes, we can write method again. So we can call this method from itself. So it's called recursion. Now, when we are calling method from method itself. So if the value is required, but user didn't specify it, then error message will be printed out, and we will start this method from the top. So again, question will be asked, user can answer to it now and provide the answer. And similarly, we can process error from the conversion. So if inside this block where we are converting value occurs some error, so exception is thrown, we can catch it and show the message to the user. So here we can write can't convert value and show error message from the exception itself. And also here we need to start this method from the beginning. So if we ask for number from the user and he entered some text, we can't convert it to integer data type. So exception will be thrown. Then we will catch this exception, show it to user, and ask to answer this question one more time. And now comes the hardest part, to convert these values. So basically there are two options. You can provide a list of data types and convert to these specific data types. So you can use if-else-if blocks for each of the case. So for example, if it's int, if it's datetime, if it's decimal, etc. Or you can use some built-in methods. So I can show you both solutions. First one is the easiest one because you don't need any additional knowledge to use it. So if type of t is equal to type of int, then I can return int answer. Okay, now we also need to specify that constraint for this case, because int is a S class inside the C#, so that where t is class. And then we can use it like this and return value as integer. And as we already know that this t is equal to int, we can surely say that return is also as t value. And we can implement many these else if statements here for different data types that you would like this method to work. So for example, date time and return date time parse answer, and so on. Else if it's decimal, else if it's long, if it's float, string, etc. So you can list all of the possible data types here. But the easier way to do it is to use built-in method. So I guess you have previously used this class convert. So I think you used it, for example, to convert to int or convert to date, time to decimal, etc. And also in this class is method change type. And this method change type can be used to change type of this value. And this method should be used like this. And for if we are using this method, then we don't need this constraint at the top, which says that t must be class. So this is the shortest solution for this task. Because now you don't need to write all the cases of these data types by yourself. And you don't need to write all these conversions by yourself, but just use this one method that tries to convert answer that was provided as string to this type t the user specified. So for example, int, string, datetime, so on. And if some error occurs inside this method, then we will catch that exception and show message to the user. So for example, if this method throws us invalid cast exception, which means that, for example, text couldn't be converted to number, then we will catch that exception and show it to the user. And as you can see, I must use also this t here or write it like this. There are two options how to convert value, and I need to do it in this case because change type result is object, but this method expects the result to be t. And as I know that after the conversion the result will be t, I can surely say that result of this method is type t. So I specify what type this method returned to me, because object is general type for all the values. Datetime is object, string is object, class itself is object, int is object. So everything inside C# comes from the system object class, as you can remember. So to cast it to specific data type, we can always use these brackets before this variable to specify. In this case, I'm saying that this object is of type t, but in other cases, I can say this object is of type int or this object is of type string. And similarly as if you have previously done some mathematical calculations that you know that In this case, result will be in whole numbers, so result will be as integer. But if you would like to use decimal division, you need to cast one of these numbers to decimal or to float. I guess you used this cast previously. And here it is the same. You just cast this result from this method to t. So this is how that method looks. And now you can use this method. So test samples can be taken from the task itself. So these three test samples. So we can use method like this, just write console helpers get answer, provide type that we expect, and question for the user. And also we can specify second argument if answer is mandatory or not. So if I don't specify it, then default value is used, which is required false, but in other cases I can specify and change this value to true. So I can enter it. Use it like this. Also check what user entered. And after that, I can run this test method. So user entered something, then we received it as result. Then comes second question where text is mandatory. So if I just hit enter, I can see that value must be provided. Error message is shown, and again this question is repeated. So I have this option to answer it if the first time there was some error. And the last one is to enter number. For example, if I don't enter it, again the error message that number is required shown, and if I enter some text, then error message that can't convert value, input string was not in a correct format is shown. So again, a message that says that this isn't valid number. And if I enter correct integer value, then everything works fine and is returned as result from this method. So basically we created one helper method that we can use in any our project where we need to get some answer from the user inside console application. So we just use this method to specify the type, and you don't need to use console write, console read, parse to check these values. And also this starting from the beginning is built in this method, so you don't need to make loops to get the right answer from the user. And that's the basic idea of generics, that you can specify the type for the method, and this method can return different types. So processes the type that you specify and also returns the value as this type. So I don't need to create multiple methods for this task to work. So I haven't created get answer as string, get answer as int with copy paste implementation, but I just created one method specifying type as variable. That is the benefit of using generics. Now I'm pushing my code to Git. And now, before we start a new topic that is HTML forms and HTTP post, we can finish our news web application. So what we did in the previous lesson was that we created navigation. So we created layout for our news web application. So we can go through all of these sections. And now we will move a little bit forward and show the data from our logic layer. So what we need to complete to do is to show latest news from the manager, then show available topics from the manager, and news inside this topic section will be empty for now. So we will just display topics because we need to cover some more topics to process the changes inside this page. So we need to pass some value to controller to know in which topic we are now, and only then receive message from this topic. So now we know just how to show news inside this page and how to show topics inside this page. So let's start with the latest news. So first step is to add reference to our news logic project. Again, dependencies, right click, add project reference, and select news logic. When that is done, we can go to news controller. And two methods that we can complete for now is index with the latest news and topics with all the topics available inside our news portal. So again, first of all, I need reference to manager itself. So I have private news manager. And again, I need to add using news logic managers. And the first page is latest news, so I need to retrieve just the latest news from the manager. That means manager get latest news. And after that, I can pass this list of news as a result to the view. So the same as we did with the store web application, I'm just retrieving list and passing it to the view. And then the view can go through all of these news and show them. And it is similar with topics. Manager get all topics and return view topics. And next step is to implement changes inside views. So views that we need to change are index and topics. So index CSHTML and topics CSHTML. Two views that we need to modify now. So for the index, we need to specify that the model is the list of news data. And again, I need to add using to this view. And as we did previously with store web application, we just wrote here using news logic data entities. Only then this news data was available. And again, when I'm creating new view, I needed to again write this using to use these entities. To avoid that, we can specify this using inside common view part. So there is one view called view imports. And inside this file, we can write all the usings that are necessary for our web application. That means this line using news logic data entities we can put inside this view. That means all of these logic data entities will be available in all of the views. So basically this is the top for each of the view that we will create. So we don't need to repeat this step again and again. So index file, and now you can see that news data is automatically recognized. And same goes for all the upcoming views that we will create. Now I have this view that should show all the latest news, and we have this part repeated for each specific new. So I created a card block and div block for each of the new, so that these news aligned in one line. And now I have this data from the manager. That means I don't need to repeat this block for multiple news, but I just need one of these blocks. So I can leave inside this row just one of these div blocks and put for each loop around it. So like this. That means that this part will be repeated for each of the news that is inside this model list. And after that, we just need to provide properties from this list that will be shown. So here was the title of the news that also worked as link. So I will just break it into multiple lines. It's not necessary. And I can write it like news title. So instead of this text that was previously inside this HTML element, now I use text from C# variable. That means for each new that is inside this model, this block will be repeated with new specific title. So if I have 10 latest news, then this block will be repeated 10 times with each of the news visible to the user. Next is topics. And it is similar to the news. And here we say that model for this view is list of topic data. And again, I don't need to add using because I already defined it inside this view imports. So topic data was automatically recognized and I can use inside this view. And for the topics news part, we won't cover today, but we can now implement this list of the topics. So again, we had this list of predefined categories or topics, and now we just need one block of these topics, so we can repeat it inside for each loop. So same as for the news, topic in model. And again, each topic will be inside this variable model because we passed all the topics to the view. So this variable now is available inside the view here called as model. Here we just define type for this variable. And now I can use for each loop to display information of each of the topics. In this case, just the title of topic. So now I can build this web application again, build news web. And now when I go to the start of the page, I can see 4 latest news that I have defined inside the manager. And when I go to the topics section, I can see the 4 topics that I have previously defined in my repositories. So everything is working fine so far. I can see the latest news and I can see all the topics. Yeah, I will push my changes now. If you used same namespaces, same project names, same class names, then everything should work the same as for me. So using news logic data entities and then model list news data and model list topic data. So I hope that this part is also working for you. And the plan for this project is to continue it step by step. When we have covered that topic, we can implement inside this news web application. So now we know how to reference logic layer and call these methods. So we can retrieve data, we can retrieve news and topics from these managers. But here we need to change the section. So we need to pass topic ID and retrieve news from this different topic. So we haven't covered it yet. So we will add and implement it in the later lessons. Okay, now we will look at the new topic that is called HTML forms. That is part of HTML. That is nothing brand new, but some more tags, some more elements that we can use to manipulate data and now to get the data from the user. So all these web applications that we made now was just with just to show the information to the user, but we didn't ask user to input anything. And as with console, it was console read, console write. It of course doesn't work with web applications. So for the web applications, we need to use HTML forms. So I can send you this link. It's pretty useful. So form is used to display multiple input elements for the user. And form is just the group for these input elements, and form sends all of these values to the server. So form looks, for example, like this. It has label and it has input. And form can have multiple labels and multiple input fields. So one label is first name, input for the first name, then label last name and input for the last name. And when user hits the button, for example, submit or register, then all the entered values inside these fields will be sent to the server. So how does it look inside HTML? So I will use previous Bootstrap HTML sample because we will also style our form using Bootstrap. So just adding, header forms, and then HTML element form. Then I can use label. Label is used to display name of this field. So for example, first name. And then input field itself. So for example, like this, label first name, input field, line break. And input is specific HTML element that is just for users input. Input can have different types. So if you know that this field is for anything, you can just use type. But if it's some specific, for example, date or number, you can use different type here. Also, valid type is, for example, email. It will include some basic validation. So just different types. And this type will be used in browser itself. So if the browser doesn't support this type, so for example, it is something new that is just in the recent HTML versions, then you shouldn't use this type because it won't work inside all of the web browsers. But now, as of HTML5, all the major types are covered in all of the browsers, so you shouldn't worry mostly about it. And for each of these fields, we also need to give a name. So for example, first name input. And for example, with the last name, and at the end of the form, when user enters all the necessary information, we need to include button that triggers this submission of the form. So it is HTML element called button with type submit. And here we can specify name of this button. So I can paste this HTML for you. And when I view this HTML page inside browser, so here somewhere at the bottom, I can see some ugly form displayed. So that is default look of HTML forms. So no styling is applied to these fields, no styling is applied to button. Of course, you can add your own classes. You can use your class, for example, button black, then add this class inside your CSS and change background of this button, change color of this button, so on. So it is normal HTML element. That means you can change style for it. Same goes for the input field. You can change borders, font size, font color, background color, and so on. Now I can enter some information in these fields and hit this button OK. After that, when I hit this button OK, you can see at the top inside address bar that this information was included in the link itself. So after the question mark comes the list of all the values, name and value that user entered. So this is the name of input field that we defined. So first name input, then the value that user provided, then ampersand, that means new variable, then last name input, again name of this field, and the value that user entered. And this one method that forms data is included inside link itself is called HTTP GET. So HTTP GET. So HTTP GET means that information from the client, so from the end user to the server, is sent using this URL or link itself. Second way how to send data is using HTTP post, and in that case, data that user enters in the form will be sent as attachment to the request, and it won't be visible inside this address bar. So again, if I go back to this Bootstrap HTML file, now I return to my file and change the method of this form. So by default, it is method get. And if I change it to method post, means it will send data back differently. So not using get method, but now using post method. Again, I'm going back to my page, refreshing it. So I enter some information, button OK, and you can see that form was refreshed. So no data is displayed now, and no data is visible here inside address bar. So it was sent as attachment in the background. So user can't see all his data inside this address bar. And this method HTTP post is of course suggested if you must send some sensitive information from the user, for example, his email, his password. You definitely need to use HTTP post method because then these values are not visible inside the address bar, and when the user hits back button, then again all this email and password will be visible. But when you use HTTP post, it is sent separately and not visible to the normal user. But of course, you can also see all of these requests. So if in the, for example, Google Chrome, I hit inspect, and then there is this section called network. And in this section network, we can see all the requests that was sent from the web browser to the server and all requests that come back from the server to us. And also in this case, if I fill in information inside this form, then I need to check preserve log so it won't delete my requests after page refresh. So preserve log, section all, I hit OK. I can see that here is request to Bootstrap HTML file. And request contains some form data. So here I can see the values that was passed. So previously I can see these values inside address bar. It was pretty easy, everyone can see. But now they are just as attachment inside my request, so they are sent in the background. But of course they are visible because request is made from the browser to the server itself. So there needs to be some place where all of these requests are sent and where all of them are visible. And in the case of HTTP post method, it is this place that helps us to debug our code. So for example, if there is some error, we can go to this section and check if the value was included in the request or not. So that is another tool that you can use as developer to resolve some errors inside your code. So to check if request itself was correct, if all the values you expected was passed to the web server. There are many inputs that you can use. Again, we won't cover all of them now, but we can briefly go through this list. So input type text is single line text input field. Radio is used to show different options for the user, so user can check one of the options. Then the checkbox again is the selection, but difference from radio is that with the list of checkbox, users can select multiple options, but with radio, just one of, for example, 5 options. So this one is input text. Then this one is radio input. This one is checkbox input. And you can see that just input type is changing. So everything stays the same. Input is different just for the type. And of course, there are some other inputs that we can use. So let's see. So this is just type. Yeah, for the password there is different type. So input type password, and that means that the mask will be displayed on this field, so we don't see what we type. Yeah, so here are all of the types that you can use for the input. And if you are using Bootstrap, and you should use Bootstrap for now, and again, you can go to this section, documentation, components, and section forms. I will send you also this link. And here is examples how you can give styling to your forms. So you can give styling to input fields or checkboxes or buttons. So you just need to wrap a label and input inside div class form group, specifying that it is one group for this input, so label and input field itself, and then add class form control to the input. And then you will achieve this basic styling for the field and for the button also. So for the button, it is button primary. And here are just some more examples with different inputs, different classes that you can use. So for example, different sizing, large controls, normal controls, small controls, drop-down boxes, so some disabled information. And so on. Even forms in one line, then you just need to add class form inline to the form element. So you can use any of these classes to your HTML elements. So again, if I go back to my example, it means I need to wrap this label and input inside form group. Same for the second. And add class to this input. Form control. And also for the button, I will add class button primary. So all of this styling comes from the Bootstrap. So form control, form group, button primary. And now when I save this file and look at this example, you can see that now my input fields have some styling. So label is before the field, then field is stretched fully, and also button has some styling. So now it looks more acceptable. Is there any questions so far about these new HTML elements? So now we covered just this HTML part, briefly about the forms. Now we will switch to the C# part and use these forms inside our web applications. Yeah, so here is just HTML sample. That means that info is collected and sent somewhere. But as this example doesn't have web server that can process this information, it is just sent to the browser itself, but this request isn't processed. So, for example, if I switch back to this get method, you can see that this value was collected here. But when we add this .NET Core web application or any web server, then web server can process this request. So web server will be that collecting all of this information and processing all of this information that we passed to it. So inside web browser, we just can send this information, but web server is that which needs to accept this information and process it. So how it usually happens is when the user hits this button, request is sent. If it's get or post, doesn't matter. Then this page is processed. For example, new user is created, and the user is sent back immediately to, for example, home page. That means normally user types all of his information, hits button, is sent to one page, saving happens and is sent back to home page, and user even didn't notice that he was sent to different pages. So it happens so fast that we just created user and went to the start page, but we can even go through 1 or 5 pages through this process. But all that happens inside this web server. So HTML itself can't process this information. We need the backend part for this process to work. Yes, currently it is saved in browser. Exactly. So basically, you can say that browser is simulating this request to itself. So it doesn't have access to web server. It doesn't know where to send this information. So it sends to itself and nothing happens. Now, firstly, we will use this new knowledge inside our store web application. So we had this project. So let's see what was there. So if I remember correctly, you had this store web application where was a list of some items, inside user's basket. So it was store index, so the list of the items inside the catalog. I can buy multiple items, then I can go to my basket and see these items inside my basket. What we will do now is that we will add new view to this controller where we can add new items to our catalog. So we just need items name, items price, and then user can add new items to this catalog. So we have this store controller. Let's start with creating new method called, okay, let's call it add item. So we added new action, new page to our website. And after that, we can add a new view to the same folder as the controller. So folder is store. That means right click, add view, and name it as add item. So again, same name as was for the method itself. So let's remove inside this view. And if we are creating view for collecting information, sending information back to the server, we need to specify type for this view for the item that we would like to create. In this case, I would like to create new item. So model should be item data. So again, that I don't need to add using in all of the views. I can just go to view imports and add using store logic data entities. Save this file. So again, you have two options. Add this using to each file where you are using entities from our logic project, or add it inside the view imports. So it is automatically available inside all of the views. So back to this add item view. So as I said, here we will create new item. That means we will provide information for this item data. So model logically is of item data. Next step is to write this HTML part for input fields. So again, we will use form, and we will use form as post method. So we don't want that user sees information he entered inside the address bar. So I'm using method post. And as we are now using C# web application, we also need to specify which action, which controller will collect and will process this information that user entered. So again, C# specific attributes starting with ASP. So ASP controller, for us it is store, and action is add item. So mostly action the form sends data to is the same where we are now. So as we are inside the add item view, I will send data as post method back to the same view. So that is first step for using forms inside C# web application. We said that all the data that will be entered here inside this form must be sent to this controller, this action. After that, we can add multiple form groups for the input fields. So in this case, we just need name and price. So name, name, text, and name for the input field. And of course, class form control. And for C# to understand which value is for which class property, the name for the input field must match to the property inside this item data. So if I go to the definition, I have properties named as name and price. That means same naming should be used inside HTML forms. So this one is name. And only then controller will understand that this name is for item data name property. Because if you use name differently, C# can't know to which property map this field. So you just need to give him some hint by doing the same naming. Similar for the price. Yeah, you can see that inside Visual Studio, if we have reference Bootstrap inside our project, it automatically gives us hints from the Bootstrap library. So when I start typing class name, it provides me with form control. And last one is button. Class button, button primary. And name for the button, for example, save. So this one is first part of user's input processing. So now we have created form to display these fields where user can enter all of the necessary information. So we can check this part, we can check how does it look, but it still won't work because we haven't specified inside the controller how this data should be processed and where should it be stored. So now I go to store add item. So we can see label for our field item's name. Here I can type item's name and here price. And as I specify that type for this field is number, then I can only type number, not the letters inside this field. And this validation comes from the browser itself. So, and I have this button save that when it's clicked, my information is sent somewhere. So page is reloaded, information is lost. So it was sent somewhere, but it wasn't processed. And now let's stop the application. So I said that all of this data should be sent to store controller add item method. Store controller add item method. So basically it is this one method. But one difference is that I said use post method. But by default, all methods inside controller are HTTP GET. So this one is GET method for add item. That means I can add different method for different HTTP method, in this case for post. And to do that, I just need to add this element before the method saying that this action is just for post data. And that first is for get. And when information is posted, we need to receive and process this information. So this method will be called with item data. And let's add using So now we have two methods, add item as HTTP get. So this one is get, and this one is HTTP post. And the second one has some parameters, and this is the data that this method will receive. So inside this get method, we will display form to the user. User can enter all the necessary information, hit that button save, and after that, all of the entered values will be passed to this method, so we can process it. And again, all of the fields that we define here with the values that user enters will be inside this item data. That's why we needed to match naming between the form and item data class. So now C# can fill up this item data class with values that user provided. And here we can call logic to save item. And after that, as I said, in the post method, user isn't left. He should be sent somewhere else to display information. So post is basically just for information processing. We send him back to the action index. So back to the catalog. So in all cases, if you are using a .NET Core web application, there will be two methods with the same name to process the form inside this view. So one is to display view to the user, it's with get method, and second one is to process the information that user entered, and it is with post method. So names should match, but for the second method you also need to include argument, so the class that collects all the information you gather from the user. So now we are at this point where we need to add some new methods to our logic part. So it was store logic and item repository. So we had two methods, get all items, get item by name. But now I will create new method to add item to this list. So create new. So items, add that. So just calling this add method to the items list. It is inside item repository. And next is the manager, where we need to include this method. So store manager, public void, create new item. Item repository, create new data. And this manager's method will be used inside controller to add new record. So back to store controller. Now we just need to call store manager create new item. So what happens? First, user enters this get part of add item view. So this HTML is displayed for him. See, he fills in all the required information, hits the button save. Then his request by the browser is sent to this link. And in this case, to controller store action add item. So now user enters this method. Information he typed is inside this model and inside this structure item data. After that, the logic part is called, which processes information and saves this new item. So basically adds to the list. After that, when everything is done, user is sent back to the start where he can see his newly added item. So now let's check how does it work. So now I have these items inside my catalog. Now I will navigate to add item. I will specify item's name, price, hit save, and we can see that this item is added to our list and visible to the user. So newly added item is available for users to buy. So that is just a basic, just the fundamentals of information processing inside the web application. So with the console, we had this console read, console write part, but for web, it is very different, and it is also it's also more difficult because you need to implement separate views for information display and for information that user can type in. And in that case, where are the information that user can enter, you need to use HTML forms and input fields as editable fields that user can enter his information. Now let's change these links at the header so we don't need to guess the links each time. So it is shared layout. And here at the shared layout, I have this navigation part. And inside navigation, I have 3 links: home, about, contact. I will change them to catalog, new item, and my basket. And according controllers and actions will be store action index action add item and action my basket. Now when I save this file and start the web again, so we have catalog, we have new item part, we have my basket part. So 3 pages that are working now and that you can use as a sample for our upcoming tasks. So here is just some basic information from the list is shown. Information from the list is moved to another list. So in this case to the basket, and also option to add new items to this list. So questions so far? Are you feeling a little bit comfortable with web applications inside C#? Okay, can you do similar task to this on your own now? Yeah, that's normal. Unexpected errors always come. Yeah, it just time that is required for you to fully absorb this information that we covered. And in the next lessons, we will do more practical tasks so you can fully use all the information that you have now. Yeah, of course, it won't come easy. That's the best part. And idea is that we have this news portal that we are creating step by step together. And later on, I will give you a huge project that you will need to do and complete on your own. But now we will just cover these small parts. We will play with web applications, with new forms and different projects. So in the upcoming lessons, we will create multiple web applications with all the inputs, all the input processing, logic part, etc. So you can get more comfortable with all this. And the goal is that you can do it more quickly and more intuitively in the future. Because now I guess that you need to look at the previous examples. You need to look how to name these controllers, where to put these views, etc. Add these references, add logic part. So many new information, and that's just, I don't know, third week, yeah. So for the third week, it is a lot of information, I know, but it will become easier in the upcoming lessons. And the idea for the Saturday is that I will send you. So for Saturday, I will send you a big task for the whole day, and task will be written in the step-by-step manner. So there will be small tasks that you need to complete to fully complete the that application for the Saturday. So we won't take any new topics, but just a big task with smaller tasks included to refresh all these topics that we covered in the last 2-3 weeks. In this huge project, you will have options. It will be the web application, but that web application also will include database, so the data will be retrieved and stored inside Microsoft SQL database. And the options for the task, I think, will be one option will be to create bigger internet shop where you can add multiple categories, multiple items to this shop itself, and the user can register, create his account, log into the system, add items to basket, see the total price for all the items, and buy these items. And second option will be this advert portal, when again user can register, create his account, log in, and write new adverts, and other users can see all the published advertisements inside this portal. And in these projects, as I said, you will need to use database, you will need to use logic layer, and so use all the knowledge that we get inside this bootcamp part. And yeah, and definitely this bootcamp part is mostly about web applications. So we will cover more and more topics and gain deeper knowledge about .NET Core web applications. Because now we just have this outer layer that we covered, just some fundamentals. but there is many more things that you can learn and you need to learn to create your own fully working, secure web application. So how does it look for you for the Saturday that I send you a practical task for these topics, HTML forms, HTML views, and just step by step you can refresh all your knowledge and in the manner as previously, look at the examples that we did together to create this task. Yeah, I think the task itself will be, for example, for 4 or 5 hours, and I will also include some advanced parts in this task. So if you really do this task in 3 or 4 hours, you can also do this advanced part. Yeah, of course, yeah. I will be available. For now, you have all this knowledge you need to create this web application from the scratch. We have these multiple projects. We have this store web application. We have started this news web application, but you just need this practice to write this code without looking at the examples. So that's the plan for the Saturday. Okay, the task will be sent out Saturday's morning, and for today, that's also it. We covered all that I was expecting. We looked at the forms and how to use them. So thank you, and good luck with the task on Saturday. And if you have questions, of course, you can ask here, and I will answer you.